Love across the Taiwan Strait is set to get easier with the latest announcement from Taiwan's government.
通过面谈以后，可以在我国的户政机关办理结婚登记。
Israel warns of a new era of war after a second wave of attacks on Hezbollah kills at least 20 people in Lebanon. We visit the former Taipei office of a company that may have links to the Hezbollah pager attack on Tuesday. Plus, authorities say they found pesticide in dumplings linked to a deadly food poisoning outbreak in eastern Taiwan. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Another step toward full marriage equality in Taiwan after a surprise announcement by the Mainland Affairs Council finally granting same-sex Chinese-Taiwanese couples a path to wedlock. TaiwanPlus reporter Reese Ayres was on the scene when the announcement was made. Reese, what's behind this decision?
Well, there have been two high-profile cases involving same-sex cross-strait couples, that's Chinese-Taiwanese couples, going through the courts. They're cases which have been referenced today by the Mainland Affairs Council in their announcement as helping to push this decision through. But first, let's hear exactly what that decision was.
那两岸同性伴侣自即日起，可以比照现行两岸 异性伴侣在第三地结婚的相关规定，检附经政府驻外机构验证的结婚证明文件以及相关应备文件，那由相关机关来进行面谈。通过面谈以后，可以在我国的户政机关办理结婚登记。
This decision follows two cases that we've actually been following quite closely here at TaiwanPlus. In August, gay couple Ryan and Rai, kept countries apart by their inability to marry, actually successfully sued the Taiwanese state, arguing that it was unconstitutional to deny Chinese-Taiwanese gay couples the chance to marry when heterosexual couples do have a path to wedlock. They were actually denied the right to interview, which is a crucial step in the marriage registration process for Chinese-Taiwanese couples. And also earlier this month, I met with Alvin and Jim, another cross-strait gay couple, who were also scared that they would be forced apart by this gap in the law. Now, they are by no means the only two couples facing this issue. Hundreds of same-sex couples have been seeking help from the Taiwan Alliance to Promote Civil Partnership Rights, or TAP-CPR. Now, Taiwan actually legalized same-sex marriage way back in 2019. They were the first country in Asia to do so. They were later extending those same rights to foreign nationals too, except for those from China. But now a lifeline for cross-strait couples. And while people are celebrating the progress made here today, rights groups say that it's not yet the end of the line. The decision means that only couples who can actually afford to travel and wed in a third country that does recognize same-sex marriage, only those couples can have their marriage recognized here in Taiwan.
Thank you, Reese. That was Reese Ayres live for us at the Mainland Affairs Council in Taipei. Israel says a new era of its war with the militant group Hezbollah has begun after a second wave of explosions in Lebanon. This time, walkie-talkies detonated, killing at least 20 people and injuring more than 450. It comes a day after a dozen people, including children, were killed and thousands injured when pagers used by Hezbollah militants blew up. Rosie Gueringer reports.
Mourners gather at a funeral for the victims of an unprecedented attack on Hezbollah militants in Lebanon, when there is another wave of explosions. Like the first attack, there were similar simultaneous blasts across southern Lebanon, this time coming from the handheld radio devices or walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah militants to communicate with each other. The blast claimed the lives of at least 20 people and injured more than 450. State news agencies reported that some home intercoms and solar power systems also detonated at the same time. It's caused mass panic in Lebanon, with people fearing there could be more blasts.
ما توقعت اللي صار اليوم، يعني اليوم رجعنا فهمت كيف انه كمان رجعت عم تنعاد الكرة، كان عندنا شوية أجهزة نحن بنعرف انه هذه الأجهزة فهمت كيف انه 100% ممكن ما يكون مالها شيء، بس كمان على صحة السلامة شلناها من هالمحل لأنه عطلنا هم.
Just the day before, hundreds of pages belonging to Hezbollah members detonated in their pockets and hands, causing the death of at least 12 people and injuring thousands, including bystanders. While seemingly targeted at Hezbollah militants, it's the number of civilian casualties in these attacks that are concerning many world leaders, with the EU's top diplomat saying there cannot be indiscriminate collateral damage. Hezbollah believes Israel is behind the attacks, in retaliation for the group's support of Hamas, who are fighting Israel in Gaza. It's also prompted warnings of further conflict in the Middle East.
This event confirms that there is a serious risk of a dramatic escalation in Lebanon, and everything must be done to avoid that escalation. I mean, the Hezbollah has been very clear in saying that it has launched its operations because of what's happening in Gaza, and that it will stop when there will be a ceasefire in Gaza.
The US says it remains involved in intensive diplomatic efforts to prevent such an escalation. That includes attempting to secure a Gaza ceasefire deal to reduce tensions. In response to the first wave of pager explosions, Hezbollah fired rockets at Israeli artillery positions, and they have also vowed to respond to the walkie-talkie attack. Israel has not confirmed or denied responsibility, but just hours after the fresh wave of blasts, top military figures indicate the country is preparing for more extensive military action, with the defense minister saying they are entering a new phase of war. An Israeli military division has been diverted from Gaza to the north, where the country shares a border with Lebanon.
ראשית, מרכז הכובד עובר צפונה. המשמעות היא שאנחנו הולכים ומסיטים כוחות, משאבים, אנרגיה לכיוון צפון. לא שכחנו את החטופים ולא שכחנו את המשימות שלנו בדרום. זו חובה שלנו ואנחנו מבצעים אותה במקביל.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also vowing to residents who were evacuated from the north during past months of war that they can soon return home. But such a homecoming could hinge on Hezbollah's response to these two deadly hardware attacks, as concern rises that the Middle East is on a cliff edge of all-out war. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
National security investigators in Taiwan are questioning the boss of a company named as being behind the pagers that exploded in Lebanon. Meanwhile, a second company, which marketed the pagers, was renting an office in Taipei. Louise Watt reports.
A company that marketed the model of pagers that exploded in Lebanon was based in this building here, in a tech hub district of Taipei. But security guards told me that according to what they saw, there was only 1 or 2 staff, no products were made here, and they left more than half a year ago. It's information that adds to the mystery of who made the pagers. Police and prosecutors are now questioning the boss of a different company, a 15-minute drive from here, called Gold Apollo. Hezbollah reportedly bought the pagers from them. But its founder told reporters on Wednesday that claim wasn't true, and that they were made and sold by a company in Hungary that was licensed to use their brand. That company in Budapest is a front for Israeli intelligence, according to a New York Times report on Thursday. So many questions remain over the origin of the pagers that killed at least 12 people and injured nearly 3,000 when they detonated. Investigators here are still trying to get to the bottom of the Taiwan connection to this case. Justin Wu and Louise Watt in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China will reintroduce tariffs on a number of Taiwanese agricultural imports starting next week. A total of 34 items that were previously exempt from import duties will soon face tariffs ranging from 5% to 20%. They include fruits, vegetables, and seafood. Beijing says the tariffs are a response to Taiwan's discriminatory restrictions on Chinese exports and the Lai administration's continued push for independence. Taipei is accusing Beijing of using economic coercion to manipulate Taiwan. Officials in Taiwan say the new tariffs will not have as big an impact as China may hope.
整体来评估来讲，它的影响有限，那风险是在可控管的范围之内。我们会持续的协助我们的农产品推往中国以外的优质的高端市场，来提升我们优质农产品的一个海外知名度。
A Chinese man who came to Taiwan on a speedboat is facing 8 months in jail for immigration offences. But he's just one in a string of Chinese nationals who've managed to reach Taiwan illegally in recent months, prompting serious questions about national security. John Van Trieste reports.
This man, Ran Fangyong, says he has no regrets about sneaking into Taiwan on a speedboat in June. He says he'd been restricted from leaving China for online speech and that he came for democracy. By the time the Coast Guard caught him, he'd gotten near the mouth of a river that runs through the heart of Taipei, undetected. A Taipei court has sentenced him for immigration offenses, which he can still appeal.
所谓呢，应予以非难。那但是呢，念及被告犯后始终坦诚犯行的态度等一切情状，那合议庭判处被告以及徒刑8个月。
As officials discuss whether to deport Ruan, bigger questions about national security loom in the background. China claims sovereignty over Taiwan, and Ruan claims he was once the captain of a Chinese submarine, sparking suggestions the National Security Bureau get involved. And Ruan's case isn't an isolated one. Recent months have seen 5 Chinese nationals land illegally on Taiwan shores, most recently on September 14th, leading to questions about holes in Taiwan's defenses. The 5 Chinese nationals say they have a range of reasons for wanting to start a new life in Taiwan, from a desire for freedom to an escape from debt. But some are suspicious these are fronts for a Chinese probe of Taiwan's coasts, and that they really got to Taiwan with military help.
也不排除了哈，中共的军方似乎是在做对于台湾的海防，尤其是淡水这个部分在做不断的在测试，会不会这些特工人员都放置在中共的潜舰里面？
Some analysts recommend high-tech monitoring solutions could make up for a lack of Coast Guard and other personnel. But with well over 1,000 kilometers of coastline to defend, the cat-and-mouse game of catching illegal crossers may not be near an end. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's defense minister says China's increased military activity around the country makes it harder to spot a potential act of war. Wellington Koo told reporters Wednesday that Taiwan needs to move closer to a war footing, testing its capacity to respond to a sudden move by China toward conflict. China conducted a large-scale military exercise after President Lai Ching-te came into office, known as Joint Sword 2024A. Taiwan is now trying to predict when a possible second set of drills will take place. A senior executive of Formosa Plastics, one of Taiwan's biggest companies, has been held at the Chinese border for over 2 weeks, according to media reports. The Mainland Affairs Council, which oversees Taiwan's relations with China, says it's unable to release details of the case and that it's yet to receive any requests for help from the detainee's family. Beijing has a history of detaining Taiwanese that it deems as endangering national security after they travel to China for work. While Taiwan and China's political and economic ties remain strained, tourism between the two may have reached a turning point. The first group of officials from China's Fujian province has arrived in Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Island for the first time in years. As Chris Gorin reports, it comes ahead of an expected full opening of group tours to the small islands.
Banners offering a warm welcome greet Chinese tourism officials arriving in Kinmen. It's the first time such a group has been organized by the Chinese side since it barred its tourists from visiting Taiwan more than 5 years ago.
北京邀请我们金门县议会由我们议长带团到北京去做交流沟通，希望能够在10月1号之前真正的开放。
The tourism officials from China's Xiamen, the coastal city in Fujian province visible from Kinmen's shore, are on what's being called a 3-day inspection tour of Kinmen. Taiwan officials say the first Chinese tour group has already applied to come to Kinmen as early as the coming weekend.
政府的支持之下，我们希望这一个审查的这个程序能够尽快的完成，那我们可以来迎接首发团的到来。
Since blocking Chinese tourists during the COVID-19 pandemic, the economy of the small Kinmen Islands, just mere miles off the Chinese coast, has suffered. Although many in Kinmen have looked forward to the return of Chinese tourists, some experts say the economic impact may be limited.
我觉得1个月要超过10万都不太容易，因为它只有到日本而已嘛，过半的人都会是一直游，那会留下来过个1天的人，大概不到半数了。
Whatever the economic benefits, the resumption of tourism between the two sides, even if only to Taiwan's outlying islands, would be a bright spot in an otherwise troubled relationship. Chris Ma and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, why this strip of land in the Mekong River has been called Vietnam's Taiwan Island and what challenges some of its newest arrivals are facing. Stay tuned.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. The US Federal Reserve has cut interest rates for the first time in 4 years. Fed Chair Jerome Powell announced a 0.5 percentage point cut, more than some analysts had predicted. The move signals an end to a period of rising rates after years of high inflation. The announcement comes less than 2 months before the US presidential election. The Fed's decision has been closely watched around the world, with many central banks set to make their own interest rate decisions. Meanwhile, Taiwan's central bank has decided to keep its current interest rate of 2%. The move comes shortly after the US Fed's announcement of a rate cut. This is the second time in a row Taiwan's central bank has decided to leave rates unchanged after it unexpectedly raised them in March. A food poisoning cluster has claimed the lives of at least 3 people in eastern Taiwan. Our reporter Sandy Chi has the details.
Health authorities say they have detected a highly toxic pesticide in millet dumplings, linked to the deaths of at least 3 people in eastern Taiwan. The tragedy began with the death on Tuesday of an 83-year-old woman from an indigenous community who died after eating millet dumplings that contained foraged snails, bamboo shoots, and taro. The woman's family and members of the community held a vigil the same evening for the woman, where several people also ate the same dumplings and became sick.
患者大概都是吃到这个阿拜之后，大概1-2个小时就出现身体不适的症状。
Health officials say a total of 12 people who attended the wake came down with food poisoning, with symptoms including convulsions and vomiting. 2 of them died the following morning, and several others remain in intensive care. The health ministry on Thursday confirmed the presence of a highly toxic pesticide in the dumplings.
瓜牛小米粽这个食鱼的检体里面，确认到有机磷托福松，急性期的症状大概是5到30分钟内会出现。
Police have already spoken to the man who collected the snails used in the dumplings to find out where they came from. Authorities say they will monitor developments and work with investigators to determine any criminal liability in the tragedy. Joseph Wu and Sani Chi for TaiwanPlus.
For decades, Vietnamese women have sought better lives by finding a Taiwanese husband and living abroad. But in the face of financial and marital problems, some couples have been sending their children back to Vietnam. Joyce Sung reports.
Along the Mekong River in southwestern Vietnam sits Tan Loc, a 3,200-hectare island that's home to over 29,000 people. Once known as the Sweet Island for its exports of sugarcane, it's now come to bear a different name, Taiwan Island, as many women here marry Taiwanese men in the hopes of a better life.
Đấy thì chính cái thời gian đó là con gái lấy chồng nước ngoài mà nhất là Đài Loan là rất nhiều. Bị suy sụp, bị phá sản cho nên cái nguồn mà thu nhập nó không còn nữa. Rồi có một số gia đình bị phá sản, bị lâm nợ, cho nên mấy cái cô gái mà lấy chồng nước ngoài đó là nhằm mục đích cũng như là giải quyết cái đời sống, là giống như là cái cứu tinh cho gia đình vậy đó.
These marriages have helped change the island, with many residents now able to afford brick homes instead of the previous thatch roof shacks with money from foreign in-laws. Over the years, rates of overseas marriages in Vietnam have also been boosted by online matchmaking services. But not all these unions end happily. Some Vietnamese women living in Taiwan with their husbands face financial and marital problems, with some forced to send their children back home. Middle schooler Chen was brought back to Tan Loc from Taiwan by her parents to be raised instead by her grandparents. She's one of what's believed to be over 1,000 unregistered children sent from overseas back to the Southeast Asian country.
我想要回台湾去上学，我很想爸爸妈妈、姐姐。
As a Taiwanese citizen, Chen cannot be naturalized as Vietnamese, nor can she officially enroll at the local school, leaving her in legal limbo and deprived of a formal education.
Có cái đó cũng có nhiều lắm. Cái đó là nó chiếm khoảng có chừng chưa có đánh giá nha, chưa có ai thống kê, nhưng mà nó chiếm khoảng 20-30%.
Tan Loc may seem like a different place to what it once was, economically lifted by its women who crossed borders for a better life. But many of those who left have sent their children back to grow up without them, only to have them also learn what it's like to dream of life beyond the Mekong Delta. Eason Pan and Joyce Sen for TaiwanPlus.
University students are back to school in Taiwan, and this band is helping a group of freshmen look forward to their new semester by connecting them to their past. Yu Chen Lai has the story.
Mia is singing about her father's migration to Taiwan across the Black Ditch, or what is known today as the Taiwan Strait. It's a common past for many Taiwanese families, and she's bringing that history to life on stage for college students starting their first day of university.
因为我们带来很多跟台湾的过去的历史、现在的文化的串联。当我知道这个卡原来是看得见海的地方，我整个人是打开的。我觉得是有一点把这个代沟补起来。
That's a gap Mia herself felt growing up. When she was preparing to go to the US to study, she was only interested in Western art. It was only after she landed in New York that she began wondering about her own cultural identity from Taiwan. That's when she started a band with her husband, Scott, over 20 years ago. It's called A Moving Sound, and they incorporate instruments from around the world. There's a bass guitar, paired with the Chinese mandolin, or liuqing, a drum from the Middle East, as well as an erhu, typically heard in traditional Taiwanese operas. Part of the performance at universities is to share with students about Taiwan's own musical traditions. And what these classical instruments are capable of when they break out of old conventions. Scott says their experimental approach to music reflects Taiwan's democratic, multicultural environment.
I kind of feel like our music could only have been made in Taiwan.
Like not just because it's got all the ethnic references are Taiwanese. Not only that though, just the climate of creativity and openness and freedom, I feel it's in the music, and I feel like that's what we deliver.
Scott says for their latest pieces, they worked with a string quartet called Ethel from New York, and they hope these international collaborations will bring Taiwan to new audiences who may not know much about the country. In a couple weeks, A Moving Sound will set off to live among and perform for underserved communities in the U.S. states of North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota, as part of a residency program funded by the U.S. National Endowment for the Arts. Their U.S. trip will also bring them to university campuses, as well as the Smithsonian Institution.
看完生动的示范演出或是表演，很多人会来跟我们，甚至是小朋友，他说他希望长大以后可以去台湾旅行。我想这是，我觉得音乐能够让我们像是做一个国民外交的一个途径，我觉得是我们的荣幸。
A Moving Sound wants to paint a picture of Taiwan in the mind of their listeners, and they hope their music carries not just Taiwan's culture and history, but also the diversity and openness that made their creativity possible. Isan Pan, Kamashi, and Yuchen Live for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. You can visit the Taiwan Plus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these modern luxury vehicles parading in front of Cambodia's ancient Angkor Wat temple. The country held the event to promote tourism to the UNESCO-listed site. I'm Yin Khvat. Take care. See you next time.